Hello again, this is Richard Doyle here, and this is the second video in my series. This video is on body weight set point. Now, it's not something that a lot of people know about, but it's interesting that it has a really big effect on your ability to lose or gain weight. And so as we get into this video, you'll begin to see how really important it is to manage that body weight set point. So enjoy. Let's get started on body weight set points. The body has a number of set points, but we're going to concentrate on the weight set point today. When all these set points are in optimal condition, i.e. they're all working together, we have a condition called homeostasis, which is when the body is running in a perfectly synchronized fashion. Now, obviously that's a good situation to be in. Now, the body actually defends these set points very strongly, and if you try to change them, the body's going to fight back through homeostasis. So if you eat too much or don't eat enough for that matter, then the likelihood is that your body will do everything in its power to actually keep your weight where the set point is. Now then, if you make some drastic changes, or maybe not so drastic, if you have been overeating and abusing your diet for maybe 3 decades, there's a good chance that you might be 30 or 40 pounds overweight. And clearly that's a problem. In fact, if you keep going on diets, and by diets I mean a restricted calorie diet that's unsustainable, and then you put all the weight back on again plus some, we call that yo-yo dieting. And that gets you in some kind of vicious cycle. We talked about a vicious cycle in the previous video with insulin. This is just another vicious cycle that we can get ourselves into. 2 working simultaneously at this time, and that's a lot worse than just having the one on its own, or the 2 separately for that matter. Now then, it's common wisdom, of course, that our brain resides in our head, but we actually have another brain in our body, and that's in the gut. So we actually have 2 brains, effectively, that communicate with each other, basically communicating through hormones, running around in the blood, and as a result the gut tells the brain what's going on in the digestive arena, and between the 2 of them they figure out which hormones to fire up and whether to make you feel hungry or full or whatever. Now then, as the result possibly of eating the standard American diet, you could be suffering from all sorts of inflammation or even systemic inflammation within the body. And one of the areas that gets inflamed in this situation is the brain. That's the brain in your head. And if that brain isn't communicating correctly with the brain in your gut, all sorts of bad things can happen, in as much as your brain is telling you when to eat basically and when not to eat, and if the messages aren't getting through, then there's going to be some problems. And all of these problems are caused by bad nutrition basically. Now, another part of your brain also houses the area that looks after your willpower, and this inflammation will also kill off neurons in that area of your brain, which will effectively take your willpower out of the game. And one of the reasons why yo-yo dieting doesn't work is because it's calorie restrictive in the first case, but secondly it requires a lot of willpower. And if your willpower is being compromised by inflammation of the brain, then you've lost that as well. Alright, let's concentrate more on the gut now. There are about 100 trillion cells in the body, and only about 10% of those are actually human cells. The most of them are actually bacteria. In fact, your gut has about 7 pounds of bacteria in it, and obviously that gut has lots of communications with the rest of the body, and we need to make sure that those communications, of course, are going as well as they possibly can. So in order to keep these communications working properly, we have to have a healthy gut, and the healthy gut needs to be fed and nurtured, and so probiotics and prebiotics are the primary products that help that gut stay healthy. So what you eat can actually create quite a problem. Now, I'm not going to go into what to specifically eat in this video. I've got another series of 10 videos or so that talk specifically about what I would be recommending people to eat. So for now, we're just giving you the why, and we'll give you the actual data in another set of videos. So the road is littered with failures as far as diets are concerned. And you tend to consider that you're basically out of control. Well, I'm going to contend here that it's not totally your fault, because there are certain things going on in your body, most obviously cravings, that basically are controlled by your hormones and your gut health and your brain health and everything else. And frankly, while you may think you're out of control, it's not entirely your fault. An example here. Let's say that the first time you have an alcoholic drink, maybe a beer or a wine, maybe you don't really like it in the first instance. It tastes bitter or whatever, and then for whatever reason, over a period of time, whether it would be peer pressure or maybe other influencers, you go back and you try it some more, and then eventually maybe you get to like it. Or maybe you don't, which is probably retrospectively a good thing, but a lot of people get to like it. In fact, they like it so much, in some cases, they even crave it. Well, obviously craving alcohol isn't a good thing, and the number of people that unfortunately suffer from alcoholism is a testament to that problem that actually exists in society today. So the more you drink, then the more you like it. Well, I could have used Coca-Cola or chocolate as a example here, but of course they have lots of sugar in them, and sugar usually is attractive to people on the first try, so that would not be such a good example here. I'm trying to use an example where something that really didn't taste right to start with becomes something that you can potentially crave. So you can end up craving things, and alcohol is just one example of that, but sugar is probably the worst example and the most prevalent. So the more you eat these things or drink these things, the more you tend to crave them. But there is some good news in this story, and the good news is that you do actually have some things going on in your brain where you can actually rewire your brain. So if you have, let's say for argument's sake, started to eat leafy greens. Now we all know leafy greens are really good for you, but not necessarily going to be your favorite taste. In fact, the first time you eat these things, you probably think, well, I'm probably not going to eat those again. But let's say that we persist and that we actually continue to eat these leafy greens. What will happen is that the neurons firing together there in your brain will start to wire together, and this idea of leafy greens not being very nice, over a period of time your brain will decide, well, maybe they're not so bad after all. And eventually you could even end up with a craving for leafy vegetables, which would obviously be a good thing. So neuroplasticity, which is what's going on here, is your ability to change the way your brain works and change the neuron connections so that you can rewire to eat things that are really good for you, but perhaps in the first instance you didn't like at all. The important thing here is it's the brain that controls the pleasure. It's not actually the food itself. While you're thinking, well, that tasted nice, I really enjoyed that, it's actually the brain that is giving you those messages. And if we rewire that brain such that the good foods that we should be eating and perhaps didn't like at all at first will now become the norm. And so over a period of time, this neuroplasticity will take care of making us think and move in a certain direction that would allow us to eat the things that are healthy for us. In which case we would potentially now turn from being a carb burner to a fat burner, which would put you in a state of ketosis. And once you become a fat burning beast, everything changes.